get your first device, you like it, and then you feel empowered to go to a vape shop where they can introduce you to other devices and show you how it's done and how you can transition from a disposable. And if we ban these disposables, this pathway away from cigarettes gets disrupted, I think.
Hello, world. Welcome to the Vaping Unplugged podcast. Everything you need to know about vaping and tobacco harm reduction.
Hello, world, and welcome to Vaping Unplugged. Everything you need to know about vaping and tobacco harm reduction. And today in the studio, you have yours truly, half of the World Vapers Alliance team. Today, we're talking with Michael, our director, and Lisa, our community manager, and myself about the news roundup of what's been happening around the world, around Europe, when it comes to vaping. WVA has some really nice and exciting updates. Earlier this month, Michael with Mariam went to Berlin in Germany to attend an SPD party conference, to talk to politicians about vaping a little bit. So today we'll talk more about that. So Michael, how was it?
Oh, it was great. Thank you, Julia. So basically, we had attendance and a stand at the so-called Vorwärts summer party from the Social Democratic Party, which is the biggest party in the government coalition. So it's the most important party. They have the chancellor in Germany, and we wanted to make a present there because there is always this kind of talk about a flavor ban in Germany without being ever fully public, and nobody wants to say it, but it's always behind the scenes and rumors that flavor bans are in discussion. So we wanted to go there and showcase politicians that flavors matter and that they are very important for adults to stay away from smoking or get away from smoking cigarettes. And what we did there was basically we had a so-called Verbotspause. For those who speak German, it's kind of a prohibition drink or something like that, which was basically water. So we gave them water and said, yeah, it's good, but it's not the real deal. So then after they received water, we shepherded them to a cocktail stand where they could choose between all different kind of cocktails and flavors and things like that. And then they got a cocktail, and then we said, see, flavors make a difference. And the same, or what applies to cocktails also applies to vaping, that these flavors are essential for smoking cessation, and that a ban would be a very bad idea. And we met a lot of the very high up in the chain politicians from the party, and they were all very interested and very nice and understood the message we brought there. But obviously, we will see if it translates to actual legislation. What we heard recently is that there are still negotiations about updating regulations, but apparently, for now, at least, the flavor ban is off the table, and I hope we played a small part in that.
Let's hope so. I mean, you still did good for those people who attended, and you kept them hydrated before having a cocktail.
Yeah, but that was not really harm reduction. I have to admit, that was strong cocktails.
So how did they actually react to first drinking water and then having a nice cocktail?
I mean, it fulfilled the purpose. It was the element of surprise, I would say. So they were a bit confused because we had a huge sign there, cocktails here, and then they received water. So they were a bit surprised in us. So what's up with this? I want a cocktail. And we were like, oh, you want a cocktail? So why? Or try to get into a conversation with them and ask them why. And they say, oh, I like alcohol, obviously, a lot of them, but also the flavors. And then that was our hook for the conversations about flavors when it comes to vaping. And obviously we gave everyone a very nice cocktail at the end. And but they reacted all very positive. I was a bit surprised, actually, that it was so positive, but they thought, oh, that makes actually sense. And yeah, flavors matter and adults like them too, because what we see a lot of times when it comes to vaping, that decision makers, but also journalists or the general public, they never really have in their head that a 50-year-old, I don't know, 30-year-long smoker working in a factory might like cherry flavors. But that is the case. And with this, we tried to showcase that, and I think it worked very well.
I'm interested if the reactions were somewhat similar to the stand of ice cream we had, because I also loved that campaign, and I think that also worked a lot. And if the reactions are similar to different products, it even showcases actually the idea better.
Yeah, I think with the it was similar, yes, but with the ice cream, the element of surprise was even bigger, because with water you can see it that it's just water, but with ice cream it looked exactly like normal ice cream. Back then, we did that in the Netherlands when they were discussing the flavor ban for the first time and handed out flavorless ice cream in front of the parliament. And there people were completely confused, because when you get a cone of ice cream, you expect something sweet, tasty, good, and then you get a tasteless, I don't know, water thingy. But it was the same intention we had, and I think for that it worked really well.
I think also a lot of people confuse the roots of like why exactly they want to ban flavors, and it's not because the actual taste of the vape is better or attractive, but it's a lot of times about packaging or about advertisement or about how it's perceived. So I think they're kind of confusing exactly what they want to get rid of. But also, speaking of Germany, it's not only the flavor ban that's on the discussion, but also the ban on disposable e-cigarettes. And together with Germany, there are some groups in Ireland, in Scotland, in the UK, now in France. Is talking about the vape on disposable e-cigarettes. And actually, disposables are kind of a really big discussion in terms of within the vaping community as well. Do we like disposables? Do we don't like disposables? Are they good? Are they bad? But generally, what's your stance on it?
Yeah, it's obviously a very controversial debate. I would suggest let's first do a round of our own opinions and on the disposables, and then maybe on the bigger picture for public health and smoking cessation, because that might be different. For me personally, I don't like disposables. I almost never use them. It must be an accident when I run out of battery or something like that, because I don't like the taste. I don't like the nicotine in there. And obviously I vape way too much. I tested it with my current vape, and I do probably 500 to 600 puffs. So that would be one disposable a day. So it's also too expensive for me and not a product for me personally.
I loved the poll that you had on Twitter, because it showcased how controversial actually this debate is. There are many opinions about disposables, and I can relate to both of the sides too, because people are making their arguments, and those arguments do make sense. I relate to the argument where disposables are an easy tool for those who don't know anything about vaping, right, to start vaping. But at the same time, many people are concerned about safety of disposables, what's in there actually, or whether it's harming vaping on a larger level. But at the same time, for me personally, when it comes to prohibiting things, it's a different policy issue that's always kind of sticks in my mind. Like, I know it never works. It causes illicit trade. And I think that's my main, like, if you want to handle this or that issue that might be controversial for you, prohibition is still not the answer to that in my head. I don't know if you guys agree or not, but we've seen prohibition failing in many countries, and I think it's going to cause even more counterproductive results.
And do you use them personally?
I have used them. I don't use them on a regular basis. I have bought them when I'm running out accidentally, as you said, occasionally when something is happening. If I run out of liquid and I cannot buy it and I'm somewhere out, I might buy them. But my friends actually who are smokers prefer to buy those disposable vapes, and they smoke less throughout the evening if they have a disposable vape, which is might not be ideal because they still not switch fully, but that might be an intro to them. Hopefully they will buy a device sometime soon. But yeah, for some people it's might be a solution. I don't know.
I think I'm in a pretty much similar situation as Lisa. I think disposables are a great short-term solution because if you're going out and with a lot of my friends, I had the same experience. They would always buy disposables when they don't want to buy cigarettes. And they would have it throughout the night if they're going out, having drinks. And actually, I noticed that a lot of them are not coming back to cigarettes afterwards. So they wouldn't vape on an everyday basis, but then when they are going out or having a nice night out, they would rather buy disposables than a pack of cigarettes. In that case, I think it's great. And then also, I do believe that a lot of people who want to quit cigarettes, they might not switch to vaping to buy the actual device, to buy the liquids, to invest in the device, because it's one investment that seems bigger to an unarmed eye, and also it kind of makes you do more effort as well. So those people who would want to quit smoking and they would buy disposables, or they would buy also pods, for example, and Juul or Blue or something like this. I think that's a great tool as well. But then for me personally, after a while, I also don't like the taste. But then if I want to have a night out, that's a great solution.
Yeah, go
Yes.
ahead.
No, I just wanted to add that there are a couple of things we might have missed upon, because it's like a variety of things that people bring up as an argumentation, right? And for me, for someone who has a vape device, to be honest, it does not make any sense to buy disposables, because first of all, they're pricier. Like, you get certain amount of puffs, but then when you have device and liquid, like, it's way more cost effective, right? So like, sometimes when I look at those people and they buy so many disposables, I'm just like, get your device already, like, because it's like really doesn't make sense in that sense. But also, I think we should be talking about smart age restrictions. That's very important. And also the environmental factors as well. Like, probably disposables cause the biggest controversy because of the environmental factors, right? So I don't know.
Yep. I think before we go into those, this personal experiences, I think, translate already very well in the general policy debate, because I think for me it's an overall positive if we look at public health, but also individual people, to do everything we can and give people as many options as possible to get rid of cigarettes, which we know are the most harmful product. So I think disposables are a good alternative. And what you said with price obviously is correct in the long run, but also it works the other way around in the short run. So for me, the main three positive things about disposables are that no knowledge is needed, which is a lot of times underestimated. How intimidating then can be if you see a vapor with the open systems, fondling around with the machine, different watt, whatever. But as a beginner, you have no idea about those kind of things. So with a disposable, you also don't need to know. So you just buy one and you're ready to go and don't need to know anything. And obviously, the first investment is way less than buying a full open system with all the flavors and coils and everything. Obviously, in the long run, that's cheaper. But as a first investment and entry point, I think it's way better for people who want to just try it out. So I think those two things, and then the third thing is, for me, I don't understand when people always complain that they are available in gas stations. For me, it's very logic. As long as cigarettes are available there, vapes should be available there as well, and obviously pouches and snus in best case scenario too. So that if a smoker goes into a gas station for a pack of cigarettes, that he sees the alternatives as well. And with disposables, I think the good thing is, like I said, that he only needs to buy or pay 5 or 10 euros, and that's his entry point. And then obviously in best case scenario, he will transition to a better device and open system at some point, and get the different flavors, because it's a journey, and the journey should be as frictionless as possible, I think. And the during the Twitter poll you mentioned, Clive Bates made a comment about one additional aspect which we don't or which we sometimes underestimate, that it's kind of intimidating if you don't know anything to walk into a vape shop. I mean, here now in Austria, unfortunately, you're not allowed to vape in a vape shop anymore, which doesn't make sense, but it's unfortunately the rule. But back then, when I started, the first time I went to a vape shop, it was super cloudy, 10 people in there, all vaping, discussing about bud and coils and whatever. And I felt intimidated with that. And the disposable takes that away. You don't need to go to the specific vape shop, but you get your first device, you like it, and then you feel empowered to go to a vape shop where they can introduce you to other devices and show you how it's done and how you can transition from a disposable. And if we ban these disposables, this pathway away from cigarettes gets disrupted, I think.
I think go ahead.
No, go ahead, Julie.
I think what you mentioned is really important, is that as long as cigarettes are available somewhere, that the alternatives should be available in the same place as well. And I was really impressed when I think you or Mariam, you were talking about Thailand, and that in Thailand you cannot buy any of the vapes, cigarettes, heat-not-burn tobacco, but you can buy cigarettes, which is a terrible, terrible way to promote harm reduction or to address the problem of smoking.
I mean, you can't buy officially.
Yes, of course.
That is the thing with the bans, which I think we need to discuss next, the black market, because obviously if you ban something, that doesn't mean nobody wants the thing anymore and nobody will supply it anymore. There will be supply. And Thailand is the perfect example. That was the only country where I was a bit afraid and I didn't want to bring my big vape, the open system. So I was reliant on disposables for 2 weeks and I hated it after that. But that was the only option, because that's what the black market provides. In the shop, you can only get super cheap cigarettes, but obviously because of the ban, and I think it's up to 5 years of jail time. Nobody ever got that fine, but it's crazy for 5 years of jail for vaping. And so then on the streets and the street vendors, they had this shopping carts, and on the top there was weed, because cannabis got legalized. And then they had a blanket over half of it, and I asked, what is behind this? And then they opened it and it was full with disposable vapes. So it makes absolutely no sense, but it shows that the black markets will provide if there is demand for something, and clearly there is demand for nicotine and for safer alternatives than smoking. So the only thing I think this ban will do is creating the black market and shifting from official shops to the streets and street sellers. And obviously there are no quality controls, no age checks. So everything the people who are promoting a ban say they want to ensure, they do the opposite with a ban, because the black market doesn't care about regulation or safety standards.
Indeed. And then the quality is so bad that it's actually even more harmful for your health than using high quality checked products. But what do you think about actually the proposal to insert replaceable batteries into disposables so that you can recycle them, and that could probably solve the problem?
Definitely. I mean, I don't know if they need to be able to be replaced, but I think it would make sense that at least you can take them out and properly recycle them or give it back, like we do with normal batteries as well. Nobody talks about that. I think every TV remote control has batteries in there, and we change them from time to time. So I think it should work the same with disposables, or you can do deposit schemes that you pay and you get, if you bring the empty one back, you get a refund, or you get a something like that. That's, I mean, you know better than I, Ukraine is powering drones with disposable vapes. So I think all the other countries should be able to deal with where to recycle disposable batteries. That shouldn't be the big challenge. And I think what we do with a ban is that we take away the innovative power of people to find solutions to that. I mean, vaping was created by consumers, and I think people will come up with innovative ideas how to deal with the environmental problem, which is one, and we need solutions for that. But if we ban it, there will definitely be no solution to it. And obviously, if something is banned, nobody will bring it back to an official recycling station because you bought an illegal product on the black market. So again, we will have the opposite result as intended due to a ban.
And it's very sad because now that you mentioned Ukraine, Eastern European market kind of gets a lot. It used to be so much more flexible. Everything was much cheaper, much more available. And now a lot more countries, Ukraine, Georgia, probably Kazakhstan, they're moving to more and more restrictions to align their legislation with the EU, or to wrongly address the problem.
Yeah, unfortunately. And I think that's why the EU is such a key player in this whole role. And everyone who follows us knows that we put a lot of efforts into EU regulation, because it's not only because of consumers within the EU. Obviously, that's also a lot of people where we need good regulation and consumer-friendly regulation, but it's also for other countries who look at the EU and kind of follow the lead of the European Union. And if we get bad regulation there, we get bad regulation in other countries as well. I think Lisa looked into a couple of them already, and we clearly see this trend. And then obviously in combination with the WHO, they reference each other. So then the WHO says, oh, the EU did this, so we should just do this as well, and vice versa. It's kind of a vicious regulatory circle, which we need to break. And I think the EU is one of the key players in there.
Yeah, I definitely agree here. Actually, today I was thinking, how does the policymaking in my country work when it comes to Georgia and when it comes to vaping? Because vaping is not banned in Georgia, but it's also like, it seems like legislation is chasing or somehow, restricting it in different aspects. And one of the aspects was that they have increased the excise tax 5 times. And as Michael already mentioned, the policymakers usually claim that this is what's happening in the EU, or this is what the recommendations were from the WHO, when in reality, I don't think they're actually thinking about smoking cessation by, generally, for instance, Georgian government. I'm sure they don't have any kind of strategy about smoking cessation. They are just taking this argument as a mask, for instance, and they are using those arguments, but at the same time, they are putting a 5 times higher tax on vape shops, which are actually providing less harmful alternatives for smokers. And the smoking rate in Georgia is still 30% around, is huge. So they're kind of standing in the way of smoking cessation, and they are claiming that they're following the recommendations or the policies from other, for instance, European Union, as an argumentation, which is definitely false, but it takes some research and maybe a little bit more insight about tobacco harm reduction to notice that, right? And the same thing is happening in Kazakhstan, actually, but not even same, but even more severe, because they are expecting a vape ban, full-scale vape ban in Kazakhstan. And that happened very interestingly enough the attention to vape ban was drawn in February in Kazakhstan. And they have been mentioning, for instance, the Ministry of Health draw as an argumentation, mentioned that there are from 3.5 to 4,000 lung cancer patients annually in Kazakhstan. And they were referring this argumentation to vapes when they did not talk about smoking at all. And like we all know that vaping does not cause lung cancer. It's toxins in conventional cigarettes that actually do. That's why vaping is a smoking cessation method. But they actually twisted the argumentation, and they are using it on vapes, which is really sad to see, especially for people who are ex-smokers in Kazakhstan or who are struggling to quit and they are on their way. And definitely I read one of the blog, and I also was in touch with local vaping community who were giving me more insights of what is happening at the moment in Kazakhstan. And they told me that logical reason, there are different argumentations that the government is, trying to talk about. It might be adolescent vaping, whereas they also have high rates of adolescent smoking, but they don't talk about again. They're talking about different things, but in reality, what one of the blogs was saying, and what I think it makes sense, is that with upcoming COP10, and probably Michael will be talking about that more and more, right, in the future, with upcoming COP10, I think this blog said, actually, I'm kind of trying to rephrase it a little bit, it said that they are trying to have something to showcase towards WHO that they have followed the recommendatory tone or whatever. So it makes sense, and it also says that it's like not only basically steamless or smokeless any products will be prohibited. And now they're talking about vaping, but they might come to other like pouches, snus, anything that is alternative, that is less riskier nicotine alternative products. So we don't know where the ban will stop. We don't know if it's going to be only vaping ban or it's going to spread to other products too. And vaping community is already very concerned. And I think that's part of the chain reaction or a vicious circle that Michael was talking about. And that's kind of very visible independently from our podcast. If you go and like look into some of the blogs that Kazakh vaping community at currently are writing about, it's very visible from that end too, that it's important for some big actors like the EU to take a look at the countries like Sweden and understand or embrace finally that smoking cessation or harm reduction is the correct way forward, and then try to spread that message, whether willingly or unwillingly, they spread the message, right, by their policies. So I think they are also responsible for some policies in the developing world. And we have seen that not only in Kazakhstan or in Georgia, but other countries as well. I don't want to have a huge monologue, but there are many cases like India or Bangladesh where prohibition has failed. And we know it fails. It causes illicit trade and puts people in a riskier situation.
Yeah, and unfortunately, nobody thinks about it, these unintended consequences that the bans bring in. And there definitely will not be any illicit trade, any black market in Kazakhstan with vape devices. Yeah, we're excited to see. I mean, we are looking forward to see what the situation will be like in Kazakhstan. But as Lisa mentioned, we should keep being hopeful, looking at countries like Sweden that have actually managed to embrace a smart evidence-based approach. And Sweden is a really, really great example of how the tradition drives innovation in a way, as snus has been a traditional product for Sweden for years and years. And it is supported. It is now taxed 20% less than before. And Sweden is becoming the very first smoke-free country in the world. So we hope that moving forward, there will be more examples like Sweden rather than like Kazakhstan.
Well, at least we see that, for instance, with upcoming vape ban in Kazakhstan, vaping community is very loud. They have created a petition. They're trying to gather signatures. They already gathered around 100,000 signatures that they should not, like the government should not ban vaping. So it always makes sense to fight, as moral of the story, I think. And we hope that our fellow vapers in Kazakhstan will be successful with their fight.
And
I like
actually,
this message. Let's become more like Sweden than Kazakhstan.
on a different note, on our YouTube channel, we have published a conversation with our ambassador from Kazakhstan. So our audience who would like to learn more about the situation in the country, what's actually happening, they can go and watch it. And it's available also with English subtitles. So for everyone curious to get to know about the country we haven't talked much before, that's a way to go. So thank you so much to Michael and Lisa for joining me today to talk about all things disposables and vape bans and our hopes for the future. And also thank you to our audience for tuning in. And we hope that you keep fighting the fight and keep following WVA on all social media channels. Send us your testimonials and stay tuned for the next episode next week. And Michael and Lisa, if you have any more final messages to our audience.
Actually, I would be very interested what the audience thinks of disposables. So wherever you watch that, just type in the comments and let's have a discussion about the disposables and the pros and cons, because I think it's not settled. We said already our general opinions, but I would be interested in the others. And I hope in the next few weeks we have some more positive news. As you mentioned, especially Sweden with the tax cut of snus. I hope they go even further in this right direction so that it's getting harder and harder for the EU to ignore them and the successful way of them. And then, as Lisa mentioned, we are heading up to COP and we will have a lot of activities and we are in the planning phase right now. So I encourage everyone to stay tuned and we will announce our activities and how you can help to at least fight against the worst regulations coming up from COP soon.
I'm gonna go grab some popcorn for the comment section. Looking forward to your ideas and thoughts, guys. Let's have a discussion.
All right. Thank you, everyone, and until next time.
See you.
Bye-bye.